Edward VI, the son of Henry VIII, became king at the age of 9 upon the death of his father. Given the king's young age, a regency was created with Edward Seymour, Earl of Hertford and soon-to-be Duke of Somerset, the new monarch's eldest uncle, becoming protector. Although Edward was intelligent, he was not physically robust, having suffered from sickness. He reigned for just 6 years until 1553 when he met his untimely death aged just 15. But while Edward's reign was brief, it was far from insignificant, and according to historian Tracy Borman, the young king had the makings of a monster. Writing for History Extra, Ms. Borman argued that Edward could have been as terrible as his father had he not died as a teenager. She explained, Edward the fragile boy that he has so often been portrayed as. He enjoyed robust health for most of his young life and had a will of steel to match. Far from being dominated by ambitious councillors such as the Dukes of Somerset and Northumberland, he had strong opinions, ideas of his own and all the makings of a tyrant. In short, he was a chip off the old block. Having spent years waiting for a male heir, Henry took a close interest in the development of his only son. An indulgent father, he regularly spoiled Edward and was determined that he should have everything that his young heart might desire. Ms. Borman continued, the result of all this was that the prince grew up to be rather spoilt and, if crossed, his temper could be vicious. A contemporary claimed that in a fit of rage, Edward once tore a living falcon into 4 pieces in front of his tutors. The 9 fascinating and intimate secrets of royal family life revealed by Prince Harry's new book, Spare, makes a number of explosive revelations and accusations about his family, in particular about Prince William. From the nicknames the family uses to the Queen whipping up a salad dressing, Prince Harry's new memoir has lifted the lid on royal life. Henry ensured Edward received a well-rounded education with an emphasis on Greek, Latin, grammar and rhetoric, as well as introducing him to horseback riding, fencing and other country pursuits. He also insisted that his son received a religious education that was at least broadly evangelical, given the royal supremacy over the church. When Edward became king in January 1547, according to Ms. Borman, he was fired with an evangelizing zeal. The imperial ambassador reported at the time, in the court, there is no bishop and no man of learning so ready to argue in support of the new doctrine as the king. Ms. Borman added, Edward spent several hours a day in private devotion and, determined that his subjects should conform to his faith, he spent much of his short reign implementing a series of radical reforms that would establish a strong Protestant doctrine in England. As monarch, Edward kept a diary, chronicling a decorous account of key events of his reign. It portrays him as cold, unfeeling and uncompromising, a dangerous blend of traits that might have hardened into tyranny if he had lived, according to Ms. Borman. She referred to an entry in his diary following the execution of his uncle and Lord Protector, the Duke of Somerset, who Edward had been close to. In 1552, the king wrote, the Duke of Somerset had his head cut off upon Tower Hill between 8 and 9 o'clock in the morning. It was around this time that Edward's reign was descending into chaos and disorder. By April 1552, his health had begun to decline and having contracted measles, his immune system was fatally weakened. He suffered from what was almost certainly tuberculosis and, exhausted by a hacking cough and high fever, he also developed ulcers across his body. In spite of his ill health, the king's mind remained sharp. He was determined to prevent the accession of his elder half-sister Mary, aware that she would undo all of the religious reforms for which he and Cranmer had worked so hard, wrote Ms. Borman. But he also proposed to disinherit his other half-sister, Elizabeth, on account of her bastardy. This ran contrary to the laws of inheritance, not to mention his late father's wishes. In late May, he signed a device for the succession, leaving the crown to Jane Grey, granddaughter of Henry VIII's sister May, also the daughter-in-law of John Dudley, who had taken on the role of Lord Protector. On July 6, Edward died at the age of 15. To his last breath, he tried to safeguard the Protestant religion, telling one of his attendants, "O Lord God, save thy chosen people of England. O my Lord God, defend this realm from papistry and maintain thy true religion." His final words were, "I am faint. Lord have mercy on me, and take my spirit." While Edward's wishes for the succession were carried out and Jane Grey was proclaimed queen, her reign was brief, lasting only 9 days. On July 19, Edward's sister Mary was proclaimed queen. She wasted no time in overturning all of her brother's reforms. However, after just 5 years on throne, Mary died, and when her sister Elizabeth ascended the throne, she continued the work Edward had begun. Ms. Borman said, "If he had lived to maturity, there is little doubt that Edward would have persecuted any nonconformists with increasing severity, even more so, perhaps, than his elder half-sister later did."